Hey everyone, and thanks for joining us for this video on looking at configuring the graphical user interface for the driver and firmware updates public preview solution. This solution's been highly anticipated for a while now. While we're not looking at it integrated into Intune today, the team at Microsoft have put in a great bit of effort to allow us to control this via the Graph API. The team have also released a graphical user interface that we're going to look at configuring today, which allows you to interact, view, approve, suspend updates, etc. Now there is certain elements you cannot do inside the user interface that we configure, but we will also take a look at them in a blog post on how we can configure different elements of your policy. So without further ado, let's take a look at how we configure the GUI. Okay, so first things first, you're going to need a machine, and on that machine we're going to need to install the long-term servicing channel of Node.JS. It is also recommended that you have an IDE such as Visual Studio Code, but it's not a necessary requirement. So if we open up the Node.js downloads page, there will be a link in the description, and if we download this 64-bit client installer, once it's downloaded, if you launch the installer, accept the terms and conditions, continue through and click install. So once installed, if we then head over to the GitHub repository, again there will be a link in the description for this. If we then code and download the zip file, we open up the zip file, and what I would like to do is extract this to any relevant location for yourself. So I'm just going to put it to the root of C, and then I want it to show me the extracted files once complete. If we then open up the repository and open the repository path in your chosen IDE, for example, I've got Visual Studio Code, right click and open with code. Once launched, what we want to do is just open up the terminal. So if we just open up the terminal, let's trust these authors. Once the terminal launches, at the root of your project, if you type npm install, and this will go away and install the relevant node packages. Okay, so we can see that is just kicking off. This will take a few minutes to complete. So while this is completing, what we'll do is we will head over to Microsoft Entra and we will create the required application registration. Okay, so if we click Applications, App Registrations, and New Registration, you can give this any name that suits yourself, so driver and firmware. So we only want this in the single tenant and just leave the redirect empty for now and click register. Once configured, if you head down to the API permissions, let's grant it the relevant permissions for the UI. So if we click add permission and then we click Microsoft Graph, this is going to be delegated permission, so the user that logs into the UI is going to need he's going to get delegated permissions to this. In here, if we type Windows Updates, expand down the option, select it, click add permissions. We will then grant the permission for the lab. Okay. Next thing to do is head up to authentication. And what we're going to need to do is add a platform here. So if we click add a platform and single web page application, in the redirect URIs, what we want to do is type in HTTP. We need to select access token and ID tokens at the bottom and click configure. Now just at this point here, if you have any other URIs, for example, if you want to access this via the IP address from a different machine in your network, you can always add a URI with that URI you will be using. For example, 192.168.0.2:3000. 3000 being the port that the application is going to run on. Okay, if we then just head back up to the overview tab, we will set up some access controls on the application itself. So from the overview tab, in the far right hand side, the managed application local directory, if you click on the driver and firmware updates UI, now I only want my Intune administrators to access this, so I'm going to use a group that's already in place in my tenant. However, if you only want a restricted set of people accessing this for a brief period of time, I would advise creating a Azure AD group and adding the relevant members in there. But if we just head over to properties to start off with, and we want to enable users to sign in, and assignment is required to yes. We click save, head over to users and groups. I want to remove the direct assignment, and I want to add in my Intune admin group. Okay, so click assign. So now I've configured that. If we head back over in the breadcrumbs to the driver and firmware updates UI, there is a couple of properties we are going to need off of here to configure our application. So if we head back over to Visual Studio, in the source directory and then config, if you open up the auth config, you will see in here that there is a couple of placeholders that need replacing. So the client ID is the application client ID within the UI. So if you just click copy to that, place the value, and then if we go to the tenant and copy the value, and click save. So you can see here that it is still installing the required Node modules. So what we'll do is we will come back in a couple of minutes time when this is completed installing, and see how it looks. Okay, so now Node's installed its required modules. If we type npm run, sorry. Now Node installed its required modules, ensure the auth config file is saved, and then type npm start. This will start the web service, which will then launch the UI in a tab. If you get prompted, you want to allow access to Node.js to run. So when the UI launches, if you just click sign in, this has signed me straight in with my relevant account because I'm in that group, and you'll see a couple of policies that I have created via the Graph API. Now, if you look inside the policies, you can see your recommended and other updates. And you can also, if there's drives available, approve and suspend them. Now, as you can see here, the policy names are not stored inside the Graph API at the moment. You can edit the policy and rename them here. For example, if I just rename this to production and click save and close that, it will rename it inside this web application. If you stand up another machine with the same details and connect to the same endpoint, the names will not copy over. This is not part of the API as it currently stands, but it is in development. I'd just like to say thank you for joining us today for this video on configuring the private preview UI. Please like and subscribe for more to come from EUC365, and keep an eye out for the upcoming blog post on the driver and firmware management. Thank you.